From shocking crimes to controversial court rulings, the world has seen cases of young individuals facing the consequences of their actions at a remarkably tender age. In this exploration of some of the youngest convicts in the world, we delve into the stories that captivated headlines, examining the complexities of their offenses, the legal systems they encountered, and the debates surrounding the appropriate punishment for minors who find themselves on the wrong side of the law. Daniel Bartlett. In a quiet town in Nottinghamshire, England, a tragic tale unfolded, capturing the attention of the nation. Daniel Bartlett, born in 1996, appeared to have a normal upbringing in a comfortable middle-class family. However, behind closed doors, a disturbing fascination took hold of him, leading to a shocking and horrifying crime. From an early age, Daniel's interest in fictional violence and gore manifested through adult-rated video games and movies. Divorce struck his family when he was 8, plunging him into a tumultuous period. As financial difficulties forced him to change schools, his disturbed mind began to take shape. He expanded his taste for violence, finding solace in soap operas with murder-centered storylines. As concerns about Daniel's behavior grew, his mother's partner raised red flags, recognizing the disturbing path he was on. At school, Daniel's abnormality became evident through violent outbursts and claims of hearing voices urging him to harm others. Alarmed by his troubling behavior, he underwent a mental health assessment but was deemed to pose little risk. The night of April 24, 2011 would forever change the course of Daniel's life and haunt a community. Having immersed himself in a marathon of violent movies, Daniel meticulously executed his plan. Armed with a claw hammer and a can of petrol, he silently approached his mother's bedroom. There, he launched a merciless attack, bludgeoning Jacqueline Bartlett multiple times. To conceal his crime, Daniel set fire to the room and orchestrated a web of lies, blaming a masked intruder. However, the truth would not remain hidden for long. Investigators, despite the house's fire damage, discovered crucial evidence on Daniel's computer, revealing his obsession with fictional murderers. The most chilling revelation came in the form of a sadistic story Daniel had written, eerily resembling his heinous act. With no room for doubt, Daniel Bartlett, dubbed the Coronation Street Killer by the press, would face the consequences of his monstrous deed. During the trial, Daniel abandoned denial and resorted to claiming he had been driven to murder by his mother's abuse. Yet, the lack of evidence and the testimony of those who knew Jacqueline as a loving woman shattered his defense. The jury found him guilty of murder, and the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years. The grotesque and senseless nature of the crime shocked both the community and the investigating officers. Detectives unraveled Daniel's intricate planning and lies, exposing the depth of his darkness. Behind bars, the unanswered question lingers. Why did a boy loved by his family for 14 years commit such an unthinkable act? This haunting case serves as a stark reminder of the complex interplay between reality and fiction, the potential dangers of unchecked fascination with violence, and the devastating consequences it can unleash. The name Daniel Bartlett will forever be synonymous with one of the most chilling crimes in recent memory, leaving us to grapple with the fragile line between innocence and the capacity for unimaginable evil. Evan Miller. In a small Lawrence County community near Moulton, Alabama, 14-year-old Evan Miller, along with his accomplice Colby Smith, brutally murdered their neighbor, Cole Cannon, in 2003. The heinous act left the community shattered and ignited a legal battle that would captivate the nation. In 2021, an online hearing was held via Zoom due to COVID-19 restrictions, where Miller hoped for a chance at parole. However, Lawrence County Circuit Judge Mark Craig shattered his dreams by resentencing him to life without parole. Miller's case had initially given hope to other prisoners across the country, as the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 2012 that mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles convicted of capital crimes were unconstitutional. Judge Craig acknowledged Miller's troubled past, marred by abuse, drug use, and mental health issues. Nevertheless, he emphasized that it was the crime itself that warranted their presence in the courtroom. The judge described Miller as the principal aggressor responsible for Cannon's death, highlighting Miller's chilling words to his victim, "Cole, I am God. I've come to take your life." These words resonated with the judge, as they sounded like they belonged in a fictional tale, not a real-life tragedy. For the victim's family, justice was finally served. Candy Cheatham, Cannon's daughter, expressed relief, gratitude, and the feeling that justice had been preserved. She commended Judge Craig for his decision, believing it to be the deserved sentence for Miller's wicked actions. The case of Evan Miller not only sparked a debate about the appropriate punishment for juvenile offenders, but also led to a wave of resentencing hearings for other inmates across the country. Prisoners serving life without parole for crimes committed as juveniles had a glimmer of hope thanks to Miller's earlier appeal. However, Alabama had been one of the states where life without parole was the only available sentence for juveniles convicted of capital crimes. The Supreme Court's ruling forced judges to consider alternative sentencing options and mitigating factors. Miller's legal team from the Montgomery-based Equal Justice Initiative filed a motion for a new trial, arguing that sentencing a 14-year-old to life without parole is cruel and unusual punishment. They asserted that Miller's age, immaturity, and troubled family environment should have been taken into account. While Miller continues to fight for a chance at parole, the victim's family feels that he has had enough opportunities to appeal his sentence. The case of Evan Miller has highlighted the complexity of balancing justice and compassion in our legal system. The court's decision reflects a belief that Miller's actions were so heinous and calculated that life without parole is the only just outcome. It also serves as a reminder of the lasting impact crimes have on the victims and their families, who must endure multiple court proceedings, reliving the horror and pain inflicted upon them. Should a teenager, regardless of the severity of their crime, be denied any possibility of redemption and rehabilitation, or is there room for a more compassionate approach that recognizes the potential for growth and change, even in those who commit the most heinous acts? Thomas McLeod Jr. In a chilling tale of tragedy and incarceration, Thomas McLeod Jr. finds himself living out a life sentence for crimes committed when he was just 14 years old. The young teenager, along with his friend Dantez Tillman, embarked on a brutal rampage that resulted in the deaths of 2 homeless men in Michigan. Convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, McLeod was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This was back in 2009, but McLeod still endures the daily hardships of prison life. One particular night, after ending a phone call, McLeod is forced back into solitary confinement due to an inappropriate conversation overheard by a guard. These isolated moments serve as a metaphor for the isolation and despair that permeate his existence. McLeod's story is not an isolated one. He is one of over 300 prisoners in Michigan serving a mandatory life sentence without parole for crimes committed as minors. Reflecting on the past, McLeod refused to discuss the specifics of his case, but maintains his innocence, admitting to making mistakes, but arguing that he and his friends never intended to kill anyone. He attributes part of his conviction to his admissions during a confusing and disoriented police interrogation. Throughout his time in prison, McLeod has faced disciplinary issues, but he has also worked towards personal growth. Engaging in reading, he has found solace in books, immersing himself in stories and expanding his knowledge. However, his opportunities for learning and personal development have dwindled since his transfer to a high-security prison in Ionia. Despite the challenges, McLeod clings to hope for a future beyond prison walls. He dreams of the day he can regain his freedom and closely follows legal developments surrounding cases challenging the life sentence laws in Michigan. Yet, as he witnesses the signs of aging and the toll prison takes on his spirit, he grapples with the fear that he may spend the rest of his life behind bars. The haunting reality of dying in prison is a constant shadow that lingers in McLeod's mind. He yearns for a life beyond these walls, filled with opportunity and the chance to redeem himself. The question remains, will justice ever provide him with a chance for redemption, or will he be forever trapped in the unforgiving embrace of a life sentence? Dantez Tillman. Our next offender committed his crimes together with McLeod Jr. Like McLeod Jr., Dantez Tillman, a middle school student, was sentenced to life imprisonment at the age of 14. Tillman and his teenage friends, including McLeod Jr., were convicted of beating a homeless man to death behind a Pontiac bar. This crime shocked the public and left them questioning how such a young individual could commit such a ruthless act. Throughout the legal proceedings, Tillman was caught between 2 worlds. While the state treated him as an adult for his heinous actions, there were instances where he was still regarded as a child. During police interrogation, his mother was allowed to sit beside him and scold him, blurring the lines between his age and understanding. Furthermore, she advised him to reject a plea deal that could have led to a reduced sentence. He was 15 at this time. Ultimately, Tillman found himself in a unique position as the youngest among over 3,000 prisoners in Michigan serving mandatory life sentences. At the time of Tillman's conviction, Michigan held the second highest number of juvenile lifers in the United States, with 358 individuals imprisoned for crimes committed during their youth. Most of these prisoners are adults who have spent decades behind bars, largely forgotten by society except for the victims' loved ones. However, Tillman's case stood out due to his young age and the brutal nature of the crime. Tillman and his best friend Thomas McLeod were charged as adults under Michigan law for the murder of Wilford Frenchie Hamilton, a homeless man. They were accused of targeting defenseless victims for sport, but Tillman denies this claim. He admits to engaging in criminal activities such as drug dealing and theft, theft, but asserts that killing the homeless was not their intention. During the trial, Tillman's confusion became apparent as he struggled to understand the gravity of the situation. He waived his right to an attorney but had his mother present during interrogation, leading to a conflicted state of mind. Ultimately, both Tillman and McLeod were convicted of first-degree felony murder, leading to mandatory life sentences without parole. While the judge expressed frustration at the sentencing requirement, he acknowledged the severity of their crime. Darren Higgins Jr. was the third teen in the group. Unlike Tillman, he accepted a plea deal from the prosecutors in exchange for a lighter sentence. Higgins got 16 years as his earliest release date. Tillman yearns for a second chance, hoping that society can see the potential for change in him. He believes that nobody is born a killer, challenging the notion that individuals are irredeemable from birth. Lionel Alexander Tate. Lionel Alexander Tate holds a dark distinction in American history as the youngest person ever sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole in the USA. The shocking case unfolded in January 2001 when Tate, at the age of 13, was convicted of first-degree murder for the brutal death of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick in Broward County, Florida. The tragic incident occurred on July 28, 1999, when Tate was left alone with Unick under the care of his mother. While downstairs playing, Tate's mother called for them to be quiet. However, 45 minutes later, Unick was found with severe injuries. Her liver was lacerated, and she had serious bruises on her legs, feet, and neck. The extent of her injuries was comparable to those resulting from a high-speed car collision. She also suffered a fractured skull, fractured rib, and swollen brain. Despite Tate's young age, he was sentenced to life imprisonment by Judge Joel T. Lazarus, who described Tate's actions as cold, callous, and indescribably cruel. The conviction was based on the application of the felony murder rule in Florida, which required Tate to be convicted of first-degree murder even if he did not intend to kill or injure anyone. Under this rule, the prosecution only needed to prove that Tate knowingly abused another child who died as a result. The controversial sentence sparked widespread criticism, particularly due to Tate's age at the time of the crime and the lack of intent to cause harm. Critics argued that convicting young children of first-degree murder without proving their intention or realization of the potential consequences was unacceptable. However, in January 2004, Tate's conviction was overturned by a state appeals court due to the lack of a mental competency evaluation before his trial. This allowed Tate to accept a plea deal he had originally rejected some years back, resulting in his release on 1 year of house arrest and 10 years of probation. The story took another dark turn when, in 2005, Tate was arrested for armed burglary, armed robbery, and violation of probation. He threatened a Domino's pizza delivery man with a handgun, assaulted an occupant in an apartment, and violated his probation terms. Tate eventually accepted a plea bargain and received a 30-year prison sentence for violating probation. In subsequent appeals and hearings, his sentences were upheld, and he is currently serving time in the Charlotte Correctional Institution. Lionel Alexander Tate's case remains a haunting example of the complexities and controversies surrounding the treatment of juvenile offenders within the Florida justice system. From the tragic murder to the subsequent legal battles, his story serves as a somber reminder of the challenges and questions surrounding youth justice and the consequences of their actions. Dima AlWawi. Back to the world of young Palestinian prisoners of Israel, a 12-year-old girl found herself behind bars. 12-year-old Dima AlWawi was released from Israeli prison after spending 2.5 months behind bars. Dima, the youngest Palestinian female detainee, was arrested near an illegal Israeli settlement on charges of attempted voluntary manslaughter and illegal possession of a knife. She was convicted in an Israeli military court and sentenced to 4.5 months in prison, half of which she completed. Palestinian adolescents frequently serve time in prison, including Dima. According to Israeli prison service data, there were 438 Palestinian youngsters behind bars for security-related charges. 5 of them had ages below 14. Dima's return to her hometown in Halhul village was met with overwhelming joy and celebration. Hundreds of neighbors and family members, waving Palestinian flags, greeted her with cheers and applause. It was a moment of triumph and relief for Dima and her family, who had endured weeks of separation and uncertainty. Dima later revealed to the Times that she intended to kill the security guard on February 9, 2016, but was swiftly captured. Her intentions were influenced by other young Palestinians' violent acts against Israeli soldiers. She admitted to dreaming of martyrdom during her pursuit. During her time in prison, Dima faced daunting challenges and hardships. She described the experience as scary, missing her parents, and feeling alone. The journey to court was particularly terrifying, as she was transported in a bus with hard metal seats, her legs chained together, and her hands cuffed. Interrogations were equally distressing for Dima. She faced a barrage of questions from 5 interrogators simultaneously, causing confusion and fear. The men screamed at her angrily and treated her as a mere joke. All she yearned for was to return home and be reunited with her parents. Although her time in prison was filled with anxiety, Dima found solace in the companionship of her fellow inmates. She formed bonds with her Arabic teacher, Aunt Dunya, and Aunt Yasmin, who showed kindness and bought her chocolate. She even learned hand embroidery and crafted a special book for her mother filled with endearing messages. The day Dima's handcuffs were finally removed, she felt an immense sense of relief, as if she could finally breathe freely again. Reuniting with her parents brought overwhelming. Their remaining family members chose to sever ties with them. 7. Juana Barraza is also known as La Mataviejitas, in English, the Old Lady Killer. She is a Mexican serial killer born on the 20th of December, Mexico. Her crimes took place in Mexico City between 1999 and 2006. Her mother was an alcoholic and was absent for much of her childhood. Barraza was raised by her maternal grandparents in a small shack in a poor Mexico City. Her grandparents were also heavy drinkers and reportedly subjected Barraza to physical and emotional trouble. As a child, Barraza was reportedly bullied and teased by other children due to her absence and her poverty. She dropped out of school at a young age and started working odd jobs, including selling newspapers, shining shoes. At the time, she was working as a street vendor and reportedly struggling to meet. Barraza was drawn to professional wrestling, which was popular in Mexico and offered the potential for fame and fun. She began training in the sport and eventually became known as Dama del Silencio, or the Lady of a masked wrestler who specialized in a style known as lucha libre. Barraza's wrestling career was not particularly successful, and she really struggled to make a living from it. However, her involvement in the sport gave a sense of identity and purpose and may have contributed to her physical strength and ability to overpower her victims. Barraza primarily targeted elderly women, gaining access to their homes on pretense of offering assistance or seeking charitable donations. Once inside, she would strangle her victims using various methods, such as using a stethoscope or a belt, and then rob them of their belongings. For many years, Barraza evaded capture, and the police struggled to identify the person behind the killings. A breakthrough came in 2006 when she was apprehended after an unrelated burglary. Police found items belonging to her victims in her possession, leading to her eventual confession. In the spring of 2008, Barraza stood trial, where the prosecution claimed she may have been responsible for up to 40 deaths. She confessed to one murder, that of Alfo, and explained to the police that her motive stemmed from long-standing resentment for her own mother's mistreatment. On the 31st of March, she was found guilty on 16 charges, which included 11. Since lived under the veil of anonymity, though her past occasionally resurfaces in the public eye. Controversy surrounded her book Cries Unheard, where she recounted her story for a fee. The families of the victims expressed frustration and anger, feeling that Mary Bell had been protected while they suffered without the same rights. Mary Bell's case continues to captivate the public's morbid fascination. Her shocking crimes defy our understanding of childhood innocence and leave us questioning what compels a child to commit such heinous acts. Her story serves as a chilling reminder that evil can exist even in the most unexpected places. Joseph Hall. In our next case, a young boy named Joseph Hall, who endured a life of abuse and turmoil, lost his bid to overturn his conviction for the murder of his neo-Nazi father. The U.S. Supreme Court decided not to hear his case, leaving child advocates and legal experts disheartened by the missed opportunity to address critical issues surrounding the interrogation of children by law enforcement. Joseph Hall was just 10 years old and faced significant learning difficulties when he confessed to killing his abusive father, Jeffrey Hall, in 2011. Jeffrey, a rising star among white supremacists, was known for his extremist views and violent tendencies. Joseph's conviction came when he was 13. He was convicted of second-degree murder, resulting in a 10-year sentence in a California juvenile facility, meaning Joseph would be released at the age of 23. Central to Joseph's case was the issue of his decision to waive his Miranda rights during police questioning. Supporters of Joseph, including child advocates and his legal team, argued that he had developmental disabilities and couldn't understand the implications of surrendering his rights. They believe that any assertion that a 10-year-old can fully understand and intelligently waive their Miranda rights during a coercive police interrogation is nonsensical. The incident occurred when Joseph, in an act of desperation, shot his father at point-blank range while he slept on the living room couch. He later revealed that he shot his father because his father often hit him and his stepmother. The court records indicate that Joseph took his father's revolver from the upstairs bedroom where his stepmother was asleep and fired a single fatal shot into his father's head. During the police police interrogation, Joseph's limited understanding of his rights became evident. The detective recited the Miranda warning, but Joseph struggled to comprehend its meaning. For instance, he believed that the right to remain silent meant he had the right to stay calm. It became increasingly clear that he didn't fully grasp the lasting consequences of his actions, as demonstrated by his question to the police officers: how many lives do people usually get? The court's decision to deny Joseph's petition for review sparked disappointment among his supporters. His attorney, Dima AlWawi, expressed disappointment and emphasized the significance of the questions raised in Joseph's case. The Supreme Court's refusal to address these issues leaves unaddressed a critical problem affecting children interrogated by law enforcement. Adding to the frustration was California Governor Jerry Brown's recent veto of SB 1052, a bill that aimed to require minors under 18 to consult with an attorney or legal guardian before waiving their Miranda rights during police interrogations. While acknowledging the vulnerability of juveniles and their susceptibility to confessing to crimes they didn't commit, the governor stated that he wanted to fully understand the implications of the bill before signing it into law. Anton Wood. Anton Wood, an 11-year-old psychopath, found himself on the brink of a death sentence for the murder of Joseph Smith in 1892. Anton's envy of the boy's gold watch and chain drove him to commit the heinous act, a crime that would have dire consequences for his young life. During his trials, Anton's fate hung in the balance. The first trial resulted in a hung jury, unable to reach a unanimous decision on his sanity. However, the second trial brought forth a guilty verdict of second-degree murder on March 24, 1893. Anton, who was 12 at that time, faced a sentence of either 25 years to life in prison or just 25 years, with conflicting reports on the duration. The impact of the verdict was overwhelming for young Anton. Believing he would be sent to the gallows, he wept openly in the courtroom. Regretting not eliminating Joseph's companions, he expressed his remorse. Anton's emotional outburst revealed a glimpse into the dark and troubled mind of a child murderer. As Anton was taken to the sheriff's office, he encountered a rogues gallery and photographs of notorious criminals. He pointed to an image of a lifeless desperado hanging from a telegraph pole, questioning whether that would be his fate too. The sheriff reassured him that he would be confined to jail, offering solace in the prospect of regular meals and avoiding strenuous labor. Life in prison, however, held unexpected twists for Anton. Despite the initial fears, he seized the opportunity for personal growth and transformation. The prison library became his sanctuary, where he immersed himself in knowledge. Fluent in French and German, Anton pursued subjects beyond his years, even mastering college-level courses. He also developed his artistic talents, and one of his paintings, depicting the governor of Colorado, was exhibited at the St. Louis World Fair in 1904. Against all odds, Anton reinvented himself, proving that redemption can be found even in the darkest of circumstances. After serving half of his sentence, Anton, whose name changed to Charles H. Henry, was granted parole in September 1905 at the age of 23. Seeking a fresh start, he changed his identity and settled in Wisconsin, where he met Estelle Terry. Their love blossomed, and they embarked on a journey of companionship, creating a peaceful life together. The details of their life and any children they may have had remain shrouded in mystery. Charles H. Henry, once the notorious Anton Wood, passed away in 1950 at the age of 68. His story serves as a powerful testament to the potential for rehabilitation, particularly for juvenile offenders. It underscores the need for a fair and compassionate approach within the justice system, recognizing the vulnerability and capacity for change in young minds. The astonishing tale of Anton Wood invites us to reflect on the power of transformation and the enduring hope for redemption. John Venables and Robert Thompson. The murder of James Bulger in 1993 shook the nation and had a profound impact on society's perception of children. The gruesome details of the crime, the young age of the perpetrators, and the vulnerability of the victims stirred universal grief and anger. The media extensively covered the crime and subsequent trial, with the CCTV image of Bulger being led away by the hand becoming ingrained in the public's consciousness. The killers were labeled as evil, beasts, and bastards by newspapers trying to reflect the nation's mood. During the trial, the excruciating suffering endured by James, including being kicked, beaten, stoned, and ultimately left on a railway track, was meticulously detailed. Given the public sentiment, it came as no surprise when John Venables and Robert Thompson, both 10 years old at the time of the murder, were ordered to be detained without limit. The judge described their act as unparalleled evil and barbarity and suggested that violent video films might have played a role. The aftermath of the trial led to debates about criminal justice policy. policy. The Guardian cautioned against using James's death as an excuse to reverse years of progress and highlighted the case of Mary Bell as proof that rehabilitation could work. However, public pressure for a harsher sentence persisted. A petition with almost 280,000 signatures called for the boys to be locked up for life. Subsequent increases in the minimum tariff were eventually overturned after judicial reviews and a ruling by the European Court of Human Rights, which determined that the boys did not receive a fair trial and that political intervention in their sentencing breached human rights. Lord Wolfe, the Lord Chief Justice, later ruled that their minimum term had expired, paving the way for their early release based on their age at the time of the crime being the overriding mitigating factor. In January 2001, Venables and Thompson were granted lifelong anonymity and new identities to protect their safety after their release. The media and the public were prohibited from revealing their identities. The Guardian supported this decision, emphasizing the importance of protecting their lives while acknowledging the need for rehabilitation as the best form of public protection. On June 23, 2001, the Bulger family learned of the parole board's decision to release Thompson and Venables, who were by then 18 years old. The conditions of their release included restrictions on contacting the Bulger family, each other, or visiting Merseyside without written consent from their probation officers. The Guardian described the release as humane and urged the Bulger family to consider forgiveness for the healing process. John Venables has faced numerous legal troubles since his initial release from prison. In 2010, he was returned to prison for violating the terms of his release, with serious allegations surfacing. He was later accused of child pornography offenses, resulting in his imprisonment. In 2011, Venables was granted a new identity after a security breach revealed his previous identity. In 2013, he was approved for release by the parole board. However, in 2017, he was recalled to prison for possessing child sexual abuse imagery. Venables faced additional charges in 2018 related to indecent images of children and was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. In 2019, Ralph Bulger, James Bulger's father, unsuccessfully challenged the lifelong order protecting Venables' anonymity, citing the potential danger it posed to Venables' life if his identity were revealed. Venables' parole hearing in 2020 was denied, and another hearing scheduled for 2022 was postponed. Throughout the years, Venables' legal troubles and the ongoing efforts to protect his identity have highlighted the extraordinary nature of James Bulger's case and the potential threats associated with revealing Venables' true identity. The cases of young convicts remind us of the capacity for extreme violence in children and the complex issues surrounding rehabilitation, public safety, and the protection of their identities. Click the links appearing on your screen for more videos like this one.